Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to a special edition of Movie Goodness, where this is the review of the HBO Max series The Last of Us here on the KB Radio Network. And this is the review of episode 2 entitled Infected. Are you checking out this show? I'm assuming you are if you're listening to this review. Um, this is great television, people. I'm I'm not even joking. Uh, to say that I was kind of overhyped for this show when it was announced, and then when we started getting closer to the premiere, which was last week, to say that I was over the moon excited would be an understatement. So it had a high bar to clear. The first episode was amazing. Now, it was long, and I heard a lot of complaints or read a lot of complaints online that it was a long pilot. It was like a movie, which it was. It was about an hour and almost an hour and 30 minutes. It was a long pilot, but it was a lot to set up. But I had zero problems with it because it was well made. Uh this episode 2, took the show on a different level for me. Uh as I've stated before, I am a big fan of this video game property. Love the games. The games are so cinematic. You can watch the game and be completely entertained without the player mode. I've done that. Even though owned the games, I actually sat down and watched the actual uh, uh, game itself or the cinematic part of the game on YouTube. They cut it to make a movie, which was, I don't know, it was about 5 6 hours long. I forgot how long it was. It took me 2 days to watch it, but that's besides the point. The It is so entertaining. So to do this show, and we all know the history of video game adaptations, not too good. And to do this show, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, well, I know they're gonna make changes. They're gonna do things that doesn't really fit the narrative of the source material, and I'm gonna get upset. Well, this hasn't happened yet. So far. Um, well, I want to go back to episode 1, something I didn't mention in the review last week for that show. The reason that episode was so long, it was supposed to be 2 parts. It was supposed to be episode 1 and 2, but HBO decided to blend it, and make it one big episode. So that's why this season is only 9 episodes. It was supposed to be 10. Yeah, so there's that. I just wanted to throw that in. But going back to my initial point, there are changes in this show. There are changes from the video games to this show. And normally that would upset me. Normally that would throw me off. But these are changes that were made to elevate the story, yet not deviating from the initial story set in the video game. And that's a testament to the writers, the filmmakers, who or the showrunners who make this show. One of which is Neil uh, Druckmann, who is the creator of the video game, who just so happened to be the director of this particular episode. And so that helps. He knows this show. I mean, he knows this property. He created it. So there you have it. This episode, as I said, it they had changes. It starts off with a change. We start off this episode. It is spoilers, by the way. I tried not to do spoilers last episode, and it was the hardest time I ever had trying to review the show, and it made no sense to me. I'm like, well, you know what? From here on out, we're doing spoilers. So if you haven't checked out episode 2, Infected, of The Last of Us, you've been warned. You can download this episode, go check out the show, and then come on back and join in on the fun. All right. This episode opens with a flashback. We go back to the day of the outbreak in Indonesia, in a city in Indonesia, and this scientist is brought in to kind of do a kind of a, what should I call it, an autopsy of sorts on this infected body. She don't know what's going on. The officials there don't know what's going on. Police don't know what's going on, and it's like, well, what do we? What is this? What do she specializes in fungus, and it's a freaky little part of the show, but it like it gives you some backstory to how this came to be. Um, of course, there's still more story to be told of exactly how this fungus mutated to take over human beings and spread the way it spread. Because in reality, fungus doesn't do that. At least I pray it doesn't. It doesn't turn people into this infected zombie-like creatures. But anywho's, uh, this government official had asked her, what should we do? She's panicking at this point because she knows there's nothing you can do. There's no vaccine for this. There's no plan B for this, contingency plan for something like this. This is never thought of. It was never thought that this would happen. So she tells um, this government official that you have to bomb the city. You have to kill everyone in it, and including her. She's like, I'm willing to sacrifice myself. And it was such a powerful scene. I don't know the actress name who portrays this scientist, but she did an awesome job, man. I mean, you can feel the desperation and pain and sacrifice all in her speech and her facial expressions, the way she was holding that cup of tea, and her hand started shaking. That's another point I wanted to break. Was her hand shaking because she was nervous and scared of what is to come, or was her hand shaking because she was infected? And I guess it didn't matter because I, they were going to bomb the city anyway. But she requested that she just go home to her family. She just wanted to be with her family. And man, you talk about heartbreaking. So we next scene, we're back in present time. Ellie is asleep. She wakes up and she turns around. She sees Joel and Tess looking at her. Joel has his gun trained on her in case she does something. Because if you've seen episode 1, they found out that she was bitten, but yet she has not been affected. Infected rather, and she's immune to this fungus. And up to this point, nobody has been immune to it. So she is the chosen one, you know. So they're confused as of why this is happening, or how is this happening? Should we trust her? If we go any further with it, would she turn on us? This is more or less Joel, and this is staying true with the game. His motivation. Tess is more hopeful at this point, and she convinces Joel to continue on, to finish this mission and bring Ellie to the Fireflies, so they can get their battery and they can head west to find Joel's brother. And the chemistry between Joel and Tess, who are played respectively by Pedro Pascal and what's the actress name? Anna Torra, I believe her name is, and she as Tess. Boy, this was her episode. This was her episode. Oh man, it was heartbreaking at the end, but we'll get to that in a second. They discover, as they go through the city, Ellie's accent. She was always told that the infected was just running wild throughout the city. She don't understand why they are able to walk through the city. And Joel and Tessa are explaining to her that it's not like that. It's still dangerous, but it's not like overrun to that extent. Whereas you can't move, you just got to know how to move. And uh, they stumble upon, I guess you can call it like a nest of infected. It was freaky because this wasn't part of the game as well. How they uh, uh, were just chilling. They were all laid out in the middle of the street, just like hundreds of them, or close to hundreds of them. And I'm like, man, that is a freaky scene. That alone was scary, And they're looking over, they have the infected haven't noticed them as of yet, but uh, yeah, man, that was just scary to look at. And this is where we get a little backstory on the infected and how it works. It's a fungus, and the little strings of the fungi run underground, and it's like a network. And this is actually how fungus work. It is like a network. How it communicates, because it is a living, breathing thing. It is a living organism. In case nobody knows and you didn't pay attention in science class, yeah, because I love science when I was in school. That was probably my best subject, but that's besides the point, people. Anywho's, yeah, this is how it runs. And with the people who were infected also on this little network, which we see later on in an episode. So they go to the museum, try to find a little shortcut through the city. They get to the museum, and we discover well, no, it wasn't at the museum. This is when they get to the Firefly headquarters or whatever it is. And they discover that the Fireflies have all killed each other because one of them was infected, or a couple of them was, whatever. And they end up killing each other. And no, I did skip too far ahead, because they did go to the museum, because that's where we encounter our clickers and our clickers from the game. And the design of the clickers in this show is exactly like the game. They really trans transferred it perfectly into live action. It looks worse, actually, and I mean that in a good way. It looks scary and freaky and disgusting. Just like you would imagine it from the game. And they're attacked by these clickers and in this museum, and they manage to get away. Ellie gets bit again in the same spot, nonetheless, that she was bitten before, but she's immune. Um, yes, we get to the Firefly headquarters, and all of them are dead, and you know, uh, at this point, Joel is like, "Well, the mission's over. Let's go back home." And Tess is fighting back, pushing back from it, like, "No, you have to continue on. Um, we can't go back home because that's not my home." And at that point, Ellie knew, and she just says, like, "Oh, she's infected." And the look on Pedro Pascal's face, man, oh my god, it was devastating as Tess reveals that she was bitten by an infected. And that scene with her breaking down and breaking it down, like what Joel has to do. He has to push on. He has to continue, even though she knows she has reached the end of her journey. She still had hope that Ellie is the key to stopping all this madness. And what a performance! So she starts to booby trap the headquarters. They had barrels of gasoline, so she's pouring it on the ground, and grenades and all this stuff. And she has her lighter. She's trying to light it as Joel and Ellie leave. Ellie didn't want to leave her behind, of course. Joel didn't want to, but he knew he had to go. And he pulls her away, and Tess is trying to flick this lighter. Couldn't get the lighter on. And the infected arrive. And man, her final scene when the infected uh, 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 got to her, but she was able to flick that lighter on and sacrifice herself and kill all those infected so they wouldn't follow Joel and Ellie. and that's where the show ended. At least this episode ended. Powerful, heartbreaking scene for a powerful, heartbreaking episode. Man, this episode really knocked it out the park, and all that, all that was a part of the game. And this is where I'm excited moving forward. I think we're in very good hands, uh, because yeah, there's a lot added to the canon of The Last of Us, a lot added to the story, a lot changed from the story, but it stays true to the story. And I didn't think you could add on to it or make a change, because here's the changes I'm talking about. For instance, in the game, spores move around and infect people, spores from the fungus and whatnot. So they changed that to this little network of like tentacles of this fungus moving around. That's fine. That makes better sense. Because it's hard to dodge spores. Um, when it was in the headquarters, how the infected came, the same infected that was laying in the streets that we saw a little earlier in the episode, how they found where they were. One of the infected in the Firefly headquarters came alive and was about to charge at him, and Joel killed him. But as Joel killed him, his hand was on the ground, and you see some of the little tentacles wrap around that infected person's hand. And that halfway across town, or all the way across town, communicated with the other infected. Now they know where they are. That is even scarier than what it is, how it's depicted in the game. Because you have to watch everything. You can't just rid yourself of these things, because they still will find a way to come and get you. Oh my God, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. you know, and it was done so well. Ellie, let me tell you, Bella Ramsey is doing an excellent job as Ellie. And she was the only casting choice that I was kind of like, on the fence with. Uh, Not because I didn't think she was a good actress, because she did a good job on Game of Thrones. It just, I didn't picture her as Ellie. And she is knocking it out the park so far. I got to keep saying so far, because we're only 2 episodes in. But she's doing an awesome job. Pedro Pascal as Joel. I notice I didn't really talk about him much, because I don't really know what to say. I don't know how how much I can uh, tell y'all how great of a job this dude is doing, because he does a great job in everything. I just watched like for the second time. I seen it last year, but The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, that movie with Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal. He was in that movie too. The movie is silly, but it's self-aware. But Pedro Pascal is excellent in that, and he is awesome in everything he's in. And this show really showcased how good of an actor he is. You see it in everything, but uh, they're like genre films or properties that The Mandalorian, or he'll be in an action movie or something like that. To really see his range, this is the show, and he is showing it, man. Oh man, then the relationship between him and Ellie is amazing. The relationship between Joel and Tess is amazing, and this was all happening at the same time. The way he talks to Tess, and Ellie's right there, and he'll change it up and talk. It just bouncing off of each other, but it's like watching a tennis match or a volleyball match. Everybody just serving, just knocking it back over the net. Everybody just returning the serve. It's is great acting, great filmmaking. The set designs are just incredible on this show. Eh, when you picture a post apocalyptic world, this is the best depiction I've seen as far as set design. It doesn't look fake. Everything it looks like a building has crumbled and fell onto another building. I mean, everything looks seamless and scary. It's a scary atmosphere. Yes, I am enjoying this show. If you can't tell, I really have no flaws thus far. We're 2 episodes in, and I've yet to find a flaw, which brings me to my grade. The Last of Us episode 2, entitled Infected, gets a letter grade of an A. Uh Back to back bangers. Back to back bangers. I know last week I was kind of like, man, I wish we can get this binged, because we're all spoiled with the binge watching. Nah, nah. I actually, this is perfect storytelling. I don't want this binged. Let's soak in this week because it was a good week. Just going back and think about things that you saw in the first episode, and you know, it's things that you don't think about when you first watch it, or you might watch the episode again sometime throughout the week, and you pick up on something else. You just let it soak in. Then that gets you hyped for the next episode, and we finally get to this one, and it's like, yeah, it was worth the wait. And if you have great storytellers, great showrunners, great actors, and a great production staff, this is what you get, man. Every week to week, you're going to be excited for it, and I'm I am truly amazed by how good this show is. I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't know it was going to be this good. Yes, first 2 episodes are A's. They are A's. Let's see, will we get straight A's on this series? I don't know. I mean, we got 7 episodes left. I don't want to jump out the window yet and say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I can't say these first 2 episodes are the greatest thing since sliced bread. So yeah, I'm happy with it. Are you happy with it? That's the biggest question that needs to be answered. Let me know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network and on other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. Don't forget, everybody, 5 stars, reviews, sharing helps the show out tremendously. If you do one of those 3 things or all of those 3 things, it would be greatly appreciated. That's if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, wherever you are getting this show. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of HBO's The Last of Us, episode 2, Infected. Come back next week when we review episode 3, of course. And I am so excited for it. I am excited for it because the little preview that we have for next week, we get introduced to Bill. And if you played the game, you know that character Bill is interesting. Let's just say it. Let's just leave it at that. And if he's half of what he is in the video game, we're in for a treat next week. Can't wait. Thank you once again. As always, everybody, I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.